It's all about being authentic, right? You need to be authentic which is where a lot of students nowadays are not thinking that way. I was big into sport as well, so I played a couple of sports, but I took kind of golf kind of seriously. So a small college first for 1 year. This is in Iowa. I went to Waldorf College for my first year. Most applicants, right? The time you start this whole process, it doesn't leave you too much time to really make drastic changes to your profile.
So the very first question that I want to ask you is about, the beginning itself, right? So when did the inspiration to, sort of study abroad come to you?
So I think for me, it was a little different from a lot of the students that we speak to nowadays. For me, that began somewhere around the end of my 10th towards 11th. I was big into sport as well, so I played a couple of sports, but I took kind of golf kind of seriously. So I was trying to see where I could pursue golf further as well. And academically too, there were a couple of options I was looking at, which was very inclined towards medicine and the medical field. So obviously, I mean, India being India, and there's a lot of opportunities that were there at that time, but not a plenty, plus lot of studying, right, to do. So it was a decision between that, and my other sort of interest was in the media, right? I was fascinated with the space, with journalism, with the overall, and electronic media was booming at that point. We had, NDTV and all these that had really been flourishing around that time, early days. So I think somewhere there is when the interest came about to see where I could pursue media, right? It's anything related to media. I didn't know what exactly at that point, but then that was the trigger, was then around the end of 10th and 11th. And my parents and me had conversations on that, and they were, obviously, I owe entirely to them to even encourage me to think on those lines. And they were able to figure out how we could, what they could afford, and what we needed to figure out in terms of some scholarships, etc., that we'd hope we'd get, right? So that was the turning point. That was pretty much the time frame when I started thinking about it.
So what did you end up studying, and where did you study?
So from that point on, I applied in India as well I tried my medical entrances, I gave that in. I did get into biotech in India. So that was one option that was there. And then again, because I was interested in the media space, so I started looking at universities in the US. So I pretty much zeroed in on the US because I was trying for a sport and academic scholarship, right? And US is big on golf. So I basically began my journey of identifying universities that offered golf as a program and had mass comm and journalism as degree offerings, because that was the space I was looking at. And then somewhere along the way, I zeroed in on a major of public relations, right? So that became what I was looking at. Degree was it was a BA in mass comm and journalism with a major in PR. I applied to about 10 universities, got into 5, and picked one, which was basically like something that fit my budget and gave me a golf and academic scholarship. So I got the best of what I wanted to do and got a focus in the degree. So the degree was, again, like I said, mass comm journalism. That's what I got into the program, with a major in PR, and got to play golf. And went to, so it was an interesting journey because I went into a small college first for 1 year. This is in Iowa. I went to Waldorf College for my first year. And once I got there, I was able to keep my grades up and do well in golf as well. And then applied to transfer, because I wanted to transfer to a university which would be bigger and better on my resume, right? So that's when I came across Iowa State, I came across University of Iowa and Drake University. I was looking within Iowa so that I could qualify for in-state tuition, right? And you pay lesser then. So these were things that I learned when I got there. Nobody told me this before. So I wish I had that knowledge pre-hand as well. It would have really helped. But anyway, net, I managed to apply and get into Drake. So Drake University is where I ultimately went to and graduated. That's where I got my BA.
So I have an interesting question for you, and this is something that's sort of started happening as a trend of late. A lot of students are choosing. So you mentioned that you started choosing universities basis the factors that you had in mind, the courses that you wanted, the kind of scholarships or opportunities that you wanted, and what fit in your budget. There is a fourth component to university shortlisting nowadays, and which is rankings. So did that ever feature in your decision making for university shortlisting?
So, I mean, rankings definitely mattered. Of course, who doesn't want to get into a top uni, right? So you obviously would, but you also have to then know that those are big bucks, and your chances of scholarship there are going to be lesser unless you're obviously a stellar candidate. I wouldn't say that I knew that I'm not like top notch. I'm not going to be in the top percentile of applicants. I knew that because, okay, I'm decent, but I'm not in the top. I was not a 99% kind of student, right? So you have to be realistic too. You got to shed any sort of warped visions of that too. So you got to be a little more authentic and real with yourself. That what am I? What is realistic for me? Let's target that, because sure, would I have wanted to go to Stanford and get a scholarship and play golf? Tiger Woods did that. Why wouldn't I for a golfer, right? So, but could I get in? Not with my golf, not with my academics, right? I knew that. So I had to look at more mid-range, right? Which, so that's when you start looking at, you got to blend them well, right? So you need to look at, I'm not saying we're looking at 1,000th ranked university, no. So I got into like a top 200, which is good enough for my program. For my program, in fact, in the Midwest, that was in the top 10. So it worked out even wonderful for that. But that was by chance. That's not because I was able to pull that data from anywhere. I got to know that only later. But I knew that the ranking wise, this university was in like the top 250 for what I'm looking at. So I was okay with that. And blend that with what is their sort of, what's the employment rate after that, right? What's the percentage of students that get a job after that? What's your cohort looking like? What does the student body comprise of? How many international students? How many domestic? All this mattered a lot, because that's going to blend your learnings and make it more superior, right? And net, that's going to help you eventually be more employable, because that's widening your network. And then looking into sort of the offerings of the programs, right? So does it meet that need of yours? And then you have that big tag of the budget, right? So can you realistically afford? And when you're applying to these, you can't go with the mindset that you're going to get a scholarship, because you don't know that.
So can you talk a little bit about, so you plan for the full tuition, and scholarships are, sort of anything bonus. So how did you go about that whole process of getting a scholarship? Did you do anything to your profile or in your application to sort of, enhance that?
I mean, so generally what happens for most applicants, right? The time you start this whole process, it doesn't leave you too much time to really make drastic changes to your profile, right? So technically the main changes that you could do is, okay, retake an SAT or a GRE or a GMAT, right? So your test scores could be something that you might want to try to up. Then in terms of other activities, you're already, like in my case, I mean, I'd already done 10th was pretty much over, now 11th and 12th, right? And I'm thinking on these lines. So I was like, okay, whatever you do, try to keep your 11th now grades decently up, and 12th, of course, anyway, you got to do your best, right? So that was the most I could do at that point to ensure that, my 10th boards went well, and to stay steady on my 11th and do well on my 12th. So from that standpoint, pay attention to what's in your control at that point. oftentimes students start this journey when all this is done or almost done, right? So you can't do much retrospectively. So the other thing that you can focus on is, yes, in terms of, for me, for example, was building on my golf, right? So I try to create a good portfolio. So to draw a parallel for people that are, let's say, non-sport, try to build a good repository or a portfolio of your other interest areas, right? Because that's what's going to matter. So whether it's your undergrad or you're going for your master's, either way, right? Some sort of, you're going to have to put together a little bit of a piece of a portfolio of yours somehow, right? To show what activities you've been doing. In undergrad, that's going to matter even more because that's what they look at, right? They want interesting, diverse people. So what have you done? So I made sure that I was big on volunteering for community service. So I spent like a good year working with a couple of NGOs, genuinely doing that, not just ticking it off. I mean, because I was able to then share those experiences in my college app and essays, right? So think with that mindset, not a checkbox, right? You need to see how all this can translate into paper when you're writing out your essays or SOPs for the masters, etc., right? So I think those things are what you will have to pay attention to, and that's what I did. So golf was one, extracurriculars like this. Then I learned languages. I'm always interested in that. So then I went to Alliance Française, enrolled there, got certified for whatever level 1 and then level 2 during this period, right? So again, further strengthening my profile as an international student applicant, right? Saying that coming from India, but these are what my interest areas are. Then I tried to get a internship when I was in my 11th with CNBC in India, in Bombay, which I got. Mumbai today, that helped, right? Because I'm trying to apply for a mass comm and journalism program and interested in it. So this internship helped me immensely when I got a letter. I did that internship for 3 months, got a nice letter from the big boss there, and that helped me immensely as well. I mean, all this added weight to the profile. So I think for any applicant, you have to start thinking a little dynamically there and think about whatever you're trying to do. Ultimately, how do you communicate this? This is going to be in the form of an essay, right? This is where you are putting your best foot forward, along with the certificates and attachments that you're going to have. But what you write is going to be mission critical for your application, right? So that's how the admissions committee is going to review it. So when you're doing these activities to strengthen your profile, whatever's still in your domain and what you have a hold of, focus on that. Think with this outcome, like what am I learning? What can I plow into that one paragraph even? Because 3 months to 4 months of this effort translates to literally 2 or 3 lines in your essay, right? My whole essay can't be about Alliance Française and CNBC and golf, right? Those are going to be lines or paras. So think with that in mind.
Do you think that admissions officers actually read the whole SOP or essay?
I mean, I would like to think they do because we're putting so much effort into it. But having known some admissions committee people as well, I have friends who are in those positions as well now in the US. They do read them. And they definitely, I mean, that's what takes them time too, right? That's why you hear back after some time, because they do. For them, it matters who they are letting in. So yeah, sure enough, they do, and which is why your initial 2 paras, the hooks, matter so much. Because if you're bland and boring, chances are that it's going to get skimmed, if at all they do. With all due respect to admissions committees, like I said, I'm sure they do read all of them. But yeah, make sure that's why all the more when you're one amongst thousands of applicants, you got to be interesting and authentic right in the beginning, because that's their hook, right? So yeah, I would sure like to believe that they read word for word of your SOPs or essays.
So I want to ask you about, so culture shocks, yes, because you're literally flying across a continents to be somewhere. Are there any sort of like memorable instances where you were like, okay, this is like really different, or like where it like really clicked for you that this is really different, or was that the first?
Then when you're in India and you order something, you're not given 5 different options, right? You say that, so like, for example, like, I mean, it was, you want to get a burger, right? So you go in, but you're like, could I just get whatever, like a regular double cheeseburger, for example. But then we're like, well, would you want pickles in it? Would you want dills in it? Would you want this? Would you want that? And you're like, sure, whatever, like, give me whatever works. You're not used to being asked so many questions to get your thing. Then, yeah, would you like something to drink? Yeah, sure. Coke, okay, large, small, medium. Yeah, small. Would you like ice in it? Sure. Like things like that. Those were different because you'd never seen that before. It's all about being authentic, right? You need to be authentic which is where a lot of students nowadays are not thinking that way, I find.
So what is your take on that? Consultancy, yes, no. Doing it yourself, yes, no. What is your opinion?